At the beginning of the story, we see James Ride, a retired soldier, suddenly infiltrating a martial arts school in Japan. His goal is to find his old enemy, but things go wrong from the very beginning. The man he is looking for is the father of the school's current master. The master of this martial arts school is a respected man who cannot tolerate anything that damages his family's honor. When he hears his father being insulted, he orders his students to kill this American immediately. But the plan backfires. James is no ordinary soldier. He is a powerful fighter. He begins taking down everyone one by one with lightning speed. Sensei realizes this is no ordinary man. He stops his students and asks why James is there. Before any answer comes, the story shifts to the past. In 1942, the Japanese army was building a camp during what was called the March of Death. This was part of the conquest of Southeast Asia. World War II was raging and James was sitting beside his dead friend whose body he had personally buried. The next morning, Japanese soldiers began searching for enemies in the jungle. Hiding nearby, James threw a stone to distract them, then suddenly attacked, killing a soldier and detonating a mine. For a moment, he thought he was winning, but the army in the jungle was far larger than he expected. He ran through the trees, but was quickly captured. The commander ordered, "Don't kill him. Capture him alive. Take him to the camp." As soon as he entered the gate, everyone's attention focused on him. The colonel immediately realized he was no ordinary man. He had been a former commander of the Infiltrated British Air Force. To prevent the trapped soldiers in the camp from gaining hope after seeing a senior officer, the colonel ordered him to be killed discreetly. At first, James looked defeated, but as soon as the sword was drawn, he escaped. Using his remarkable fighting skills, he killed 3 guards and fled into the jungle. Soon, he found the wreckage of a crashed plane, but he could not hide there for long. He was running again when he stepped into a hidden trap. The soldiers recaptured him and brought him back to the camp. The colonel pulled out his dog tag and found a medal hanging below his waist, a medal awarded for exceptional bravery during the war. The colonel was impressed and said, "Don't kill him yet. Take him to the area beneath the building and let him rest." But the relief did not last long. The next morning, they were planning to send him into another battle where he was certain to die. At night, a guard suggested killing him while he slept, but the colonel refused. He wanted the entire camp to witness the consequences of disobeying his orders. James was locked inside a small cell where he met other prisoners, most of them Americans. One of them introduced himself as Gabriel. He asked if the British Army would come to rescue them, but James remained silent. He had heard that Vietnamese prisoners had been held here before, but they were all killed before any help arrived. James remembered that when his squad came, their plane crashed due to heavy enemy fire. But he survived. Sometime later, James reported that all the pilots stationed in the area had been killed, meaning rescue was impossible. The rules inside this Japanese prison were extremely strict. Still, he was determined not to give up easily. He decided to attempt another escape, but the other prisoners told him not to even think about it. This camp was built on an island. There were watchtowers and guards everywhere. Anyone who tried to escape was always caught. This camp was designed to break the strongest and most dangerous prisoners. They were all forced to work to strengthen the camp's walls. A little further up was another camp called the March of Death. No one had ever returned from there. No one knew what happened inside. The next morning began with screams inside the compound. All the soldiers were training in strict formation. The air echoed with the sound of boots and discipline. It was time for punishment. The soldiers tied James' hands and led him to the center of the field. But before he could be seen by everyone, the commander ordered the ropes cut and removed him. In reality, the commander was saving James for something more serious. The real drama had not begun yet. Two prisoners were about to be punished for stealing food from the rations and hiding it under their beds. Their punishment was not death, but they would have to face the camp's most dangerous fighter. The camp's strongest fighter looked terrifying. His body was built like a machine. His punches were so fast and powerful that even the toughest prisoners stepped back in fear. This scene was meant to remind everyone of the consequences of stealing from the Japanese army. After the fight, everyone expected James to die next. No one believed James had any chance of surviving against such a brutal fighter, but within seconds, James knocked out the huge and dangerous fighter with just 2 strikes. The colonel said nothing. He quietly walked back to his tent. Inside, a soldier told him that James should not be kept alive. He said a man like James should be tortured until his last breath. But the colonel had different thoughts. There was a hint of respect for James' strength in his eyes. Still, he promised that James' time would soon come. Later, James met Captain Collins. Collins was impressed by his fighting style as everyone began to drink in celebration. The bearded prisoner brought out his own brew, a liquor so strong it burned his throat. But before the mood could lighten, Japanese soldiers arrived. They called James into the colonel's tent. Inside the tent, a young nurse was packing supplies. James and the nurse looked at each other for a moment. They didn't say anything, but they both felt something. Then the colonel said, "I didn't call you to praise you." He had recognized James' fighting style, a style once banned in Japan. Then the discussion shifted to James' medal. It wasn't James' medal. It belonged to his father. The colonel explained, "My father was also in the army." Then he pulled out his deceased officer's sword and made a small cut on James' cheek. He told the guards to take him away. It was simple. James would be executed the next day. The next morning, the colonel arranged another fight. He knew James' fighting style was powerful against a single opponent, but wouldn't work against a group. So he ordered the strongest soldiers in his squad to fight him. But James moved like a storm. Within a minute, he had knocked down all 3 of them. If he wanted, he could have finished them with a final blow. But James stopped. He didn't kill them. The colonel returned to his tent without saying a word. Later, when the Japanese soldiers mocked James, he told them the fighters were not cowards. He said they were simply following their commander's orders, just like us. Everyone fell silent after hearing this. Moments later, gunfire echoed through the camp. The colonel had ordered the 3 defeated fighters to be executed. He wanted everyone to see that mercy did not exist here. Gabriel's and Collins's wounds were getting worse. Soon, they would be sent to a camp from which no one ever returned. Time was running out, so James created a dangerous plan. He had seen a radio on top of the watchtower. If he could reach it, he could send a signal to the British forces on the shore. Once they received that signal, they would come to rescue them. So, the plan was made. During the next work shift, the prisoners would cause a commotion. There was shouting. All the guards ran toward the noise. The guard on the tower also came down. James ran to the tower and climbed up. He grabbed the radio and hid behind sandbags. As he tried to leave, a nurse saw him. A moment later, a guard began harassing the nurse. The nurse refused him, saying, "I don't want this." He slapped her hard. But even after intense questioning, she refused to reveal anything about James. Back in the sleeping quarters, James hid the radio. Everyone decided not to send a signal. They only needed to listen. Maybe they would catch a British or American transmission. But the next morning, danger arrived. The colonel called an emergency meeting. He wanted to know who had attempted escape. James noticed a prisoner looking extremely nervous and spoke to him gently that night. The prisoner told him there was a small hole at the edge of the border. I made a secret hole there. I'm slowly enlarging it so I can escape. James decided to escape. That night, he arranged his bed to look like someone was sleeping there with their face covered and quietly slipped away. The bearded soldier also helped him. After several months, he finally stepped outside the camp's boundary. Just then, a guard came for inspection and noticed James was missing. But after looking into the bearded man's eyes, he said nothing and walked away. James moved through the forest until he reached the edge. Suddenly, he heard an American military secret code on the radio. This meant that American troops were close, possibly preparing to attack. There, he found the crashed plane he had seen earlier. A metal hook lay near the wreckage, and James came up with a new idea. He quietly returned to his room, passing through the same route. The next morning, James gathered his friends and told them what he had discovered. The voices on the radio were speaking in the Navajo language, a code used only by the American military. This confirmed that American troops were nearby. James told them something else. He had found a glider-like aircraft in the jungle. If he could attach the glider to a passing plane, it could lift into the air and carry them to safety. The plan sounded insane, but they had nothing to lose. Even a small chance was enough for them. Everyone agreed to help despite the risk, but their hope did not last long. The soldiers arrived, and James was taken before the colonel. The colonel had also heard the Navajo code and demanded that James translated it. But James explained that only the American army used that language. He said, "I'm from Britain, and even if I knew, I would never betray my comrades." This infuriated the colonel. He ordered the soldiers to tie James up and beat him until he collapsed to his knees. Each strike was meant to be brutal. Cries of pain echoed through the tent. When James fell, the guards prepared to cut his rope and hit him again. But James used his remaining strength and launched his real plan. He struck one of the guards down right in front of the colonel. Colonel and his men were defeated by a single prisoner. This felt like a deep insult to the colonel. Furious, he went to the center of the camp and killed several workers. He declared that the rest would now suffer a fate worse than death. The pain James endured left him unconscious. When he woke up 2 days later, he was lying in the infirmary. The colonel had ordered that he be kept alive. His wounds were being treated by a young nurse named Teresa. She had been working in the camp for 3 months, trapped like the others. James was about to ask her something when a soldier arrived and separated them. At night, James lay alone on his bed. Suddenly, gunfire echoed through the camp. When he opened his eyes, a knife flashed near his face. Colonel Ito was killing another man in front of everyone to terrify them further. It was a horrifying sight. But during this moment, James understood the colonel's true intentions. Ito did not want to kill James secretly. Every fight, every confrontation was part of a larger plan. He wanted to defeat James in a fair fight, just as his teacher had taught him. James was exhausted, but his spirit remained strong. He said, "If this was your best fighter, I will definitely return home alive." The colonel's expression did not change. He warned that if Japan lost, not a single man in the camp would survive. After this, James returned to his comrades. His friends told him that American planes had arrived that morning and had dropped thousands of leaflets. These leaflets warned the Japanese soldiers that the American army was observing their actions and monitoring the mistreatment of prisoners. Justice would be delivered as soon as the war ended, but James was unmoved. He explained that Ito would never surrender. Even if Japan lost, he would kill everyone in the camp. Everyone listened silently, afraid of what awaited them. At night, Gabriel went to check the glider in the forest. On his way back, he ran into James. The direct path to their room was blocked, so they sneaked out and took a side route, but a guard spotted them. In the struggle that followed, they had no choice but to kill him or be caught. Hearing the commotion, another officer arrived. Instead of killing this man, James decided to let him go. The officer quietly escorted them back to their room, but then he betrayed them and informed the guards that a soldier had been murdered. Upon hearing this, all the soldiers stormed into the prisoner's room. A heavy silence fell over the camp. By morning, the colonel decided the murderer must be identified. To protect his comrades, James stepped forward and said, "I killed him." The colonel demanded proof. He ordered James to demonstrate his technique on a prisoner. When the prisoner refused to cooperate, the guards shot him in the head. Then, Captain C.S. was sent to confront the guards. He defeated them all. All the prisoners were driven back to their cells like animals. James was once again brought before the Colonel. James called him a coward and challenged him to fight if he had the courage. The colonel headbutted James, injuring him, and ordered him thrown out. That night, James and Gabriel escaped for real. They traveled through the jungle toward the shore to contact the American forces. They spoke in different languages so the Japanese soldiers could not understand them. Their plan was simple: steal a rocket to send a signal, launch it into the air so a passing plane would detect their position, then attach the glider to the plane and fly off the island. It was their only chance to escape. When James returned to his room in the camp, everything was deserted. The room was empty, the lights off. Suddenly, soldiers burst in and knocked him unconscious. He only woke up when the roar of airplanes filled the sky. The camp nurses looked up, believing the Americans had come to rescue them. Moments later, chaos erupted throughout the camp. Prisoners were tied up and explosions shook the island. The American army had launched their attack. Colonel Adetto had lost control of the area. In a fit of rage, he began killing everyone he saw, whether soldier or prisoner. Amid the gunfire, James realized he had to reach the radio and speak with the American soldiers again. But when he reached the radio, it was completely destroyed. His only hope now was the transmitter on the tower. The nurses showed great courage at this moment. They distracted the guards, lured them closer, and then eliminated them. The path was now clear. From the top of the tower, Gabriel quickly sent an emergency signal. Down below, the entire camp descended into chaos. Japanese soldiers opened fire on prisoners trying to escape. James couldn't stand by and watch this. He grabbed a rifle and began shooting. He took down several guards and gave the other prisoners the courage to fight back. Gradually, a massive rebellion erupted in the camp. They fought with whatever they could find. In the middle of the battle, Captain Collins confronted the officer who had tormented him from the beginning. Their fight became intense, but it didn't last long. Collins was about to win when someone shot him from behind, and he fell. Seeing his friend fall, James became even more furious. He ran straight to the colonel's tent where Colonel Ito stood with his sword drawn. A fierce battle broke out between the two. Ado finally fell and James remained standing. Exhausted, bloodied, but victorious. Gabriel dragged James out. Planes were circling overhead and time was running out. They both began to flee. A soldier raised his rifle to shoot them in the back, but Colonel Addo pushed the soldier's gun aside with his sword, allowing them to escape. This was his final gesture of respect toward the victor. James and Gabriel ran through the forest and reached the glider. The American planes above launched their final strike. Just then, Japanese soldiers emerged from the trees to attack, but the planes opened fire. All the Japanese soldiers were taken down instantly. The good and the bad were gone. Amid the smoke and chaos, James picked up the towing cable and attached it to the glider. An American plane flew past, grabbed the cable, and lifted the glider into the sky. The island slowly faded behind them. Both vowed to return one day and rescue the others. Years later, That vow brought James to a small martial arts school in Japan. He had come to find the man who had trained Colonel Ito, the new master, sent his students away and listened carefully to James. The master explained that his father, an old mentor, had passed away a year earlier. Before dying, he had predicted that one day a foreigner would come, a man who fought with techniques that had been banned long ago. The master asked James to demonstrate his technique. James studied himself and showed a few deadly moves without attacking. The master immediately recognized him as the man from the prophecy. He then opened a small wooden box. Inside were James' father's medal and his dog tag. Two warriors who might have been enemies in another time now stood together in peace. If you like the video, please like it and subscribe to the channel.